Hello, and welcome once again to Know Before You Go, a program of the Dominican Central Province of St. Albert the Great that allows us to take a look ahead at the upcoming weekend's readings. I am Father Jim Marchionda, Provincial of the Chicago Dominicans, and I am happy to be with you as we approach the second Sunday of Lent. Before getting into the second Sunday of Lent, I first wish to apologize that we failed to get a Know Before You Go out to you last weekend. The person that usually does it was home ill, and we did not have a backup plan. I can assure you we will have a backup plan from now on and try never to miss getting one of our episodes out to you. The only good news about it, since you've been watching Know Before You Go for so many years now, I'm sure when you realized you weren't getting an email from us, you probably ran straight to your missal or to your Bible yourselves, looked up the readings, and spent some time praying and meditating on the readings before you got to Mass last weekend. At least I hope that's what happened. We are approaching this weekend the second Sunday of Lent. The three readings are outstanding. They're from the book of Genesis, from St. Paul's second letter to Timothy, and from the Gospel of St. Matthew. And all of them are very appropriate for this season of Lent that we're in, and for getting us to realize what I often preach about the great glory of God in our lives, and about how that great glory transforms us into being partners with God. The first reading from the book of Genesis is about the call of Abram. And Abram is called to leave his land, to take his wife, his family, his belongings, and to go where God calls him. And God says to Abram, I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Major teaching. He goes on to say, all earth shall find blessing in you. It's a theme that I often preach, that we each in our own way are unique, and we are made in the image and likeness of God, and we are in fact greatly gifted and have something to give the world, not because of us, or not so as to draw attention to ourselves, but so as to be a blessing for all the earth, just as Abram was called to be. Just as every disciple is always called to be, not to focus the attention on oneself, but to be the blessing that God needs us to be. That call of Abram, that reading from the book of Genesis, is paralleled in one sense by the Gospel of Matthew. For the second Sunday of Lent, on the Gospel of Matthew, we have the story of the Transfiguration. One of the most beautiful, powerful stories in the Scriptures. The Transfiguration, where Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up to a high mountaintop. And while they were up there together, they experience the Transfiguration, where Jesus becomes bright as light. His face, his entire being is changed. He radiates the glory of God, the light of God. And in witnessing that, the disciples also see him communing, conversing with Elijah and with Moses, the law and the prophets. And then all of a sudden, you know the story. There's a big cloud that overshadows them. And out of the cloud comes this voice saying, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And the disciples are petrified and fall to the ground in fear. Jesus goes over to them, touches them, and says, get up and do not be afraid. And when they open their eyes and they look up at him, out of their terror, out of their fear, there is no one any longer there with them but Jesus. They then proceed down the mountainside, and Jesus tells them not to tell anyone until the Son of Man has risen from the dead. You know that story. There's a wonderful, wonderful little story within the story, too, about when Peter experiences Jesus with Elijah and with Moses. He gets so excited. He says, let me build 3 tents, one for you, one for Elijah, one for Moses. It's like he wants to stay there forever. It's such a glorious thing. It's such a beautiful thing. But they can't stay there forever. They have to get back down to reality. That's the point of being able to experience a glimpse of the glory of God. That it's not just for you. It's not just for us. We get those glimpses of God's glory so as to return to reality, so as to return to the hard work of what it means to be a disciple. That's exactly what your second reading is going to say. St. Paul's second letter to Timothy, he opens up very strongly saying, bear your share of the hardship for the gospel, with the faith that doesn't come, or the strength that doesn't come from you, but comes from God. Never be afraid to bear your share of the hardship of the gospel. All the readings today just have this marvelous theme about our being a blessing to others. Our being a blessing to others, just like Abram was, no matter the cost, no matter how difficult it is, and always avoiding the temptation to have it be about us, to not shine the light on ourselves, but to shine our light on the meaning and the glory of God in our lives. The Gospel from Matthew gives us a sense of the glimpse of God's glory, so as to be able to fortify the disciples to go down and face the lives that they had to face, living up to their share of the gospel. And it's the same thing for us. This weekend is an opportunity for us to think about the glimpses of God's glory that we have received in our lives. Meditate on that this weekend. What is your glimpse of the glory of God in your life? Possibly your glimpse is observing someone who is suffering tremendously and yet is so faithful to God and trusting in God, regardless of the pain and regardless of the suffering. Perhaps your glimpse of the glory of God is holding your new child in your arms, or your grandchild. Perhaps your glimpse of the glory of God is looking into the eyes of your spouse and realizing the profound, deep love you have for one another. The second Sunday of Lent gives us a chance to observe how Peter, James, and John received a glimpse of the glory of God that strengthened them and propelled them through the rest of their lives and through their discipleship, no matter how difficult that discipleship became. You and I are invited to identify with them on this second Sunday of Lent, and to think about and to be grateful for the glimpses of glory in our lives. The glimpses of glory among ourselves. The glimpses of glory that God has given each one of us. Let nothing rob you of your memory of how God has been glorified in you. Let nothing take it away from you. And as you look at your glimpses of glory that you still have to this day, renew your commitments, renew your gratitude, renew your love, and thank God for the way in which you can participate in this gospel and in changing the world as you go forward. God bless you and your loved ones.
All right.
Have a